Now, when Joey gets home, the defendant's testimony to you was that Joey gets home, and her and this Johnny boy use drugs, and then Joey goes in the other room and he gets paranoid, he's delusional, all these different things. Again, I remind you, the defendant has every reason in the world to suggest to you and to say that Joey is going off the deep end at this point. But look at these messages. What does Joey say? Sorry, I think I overreacted. It's all good, no worries. Okay, so he talks about an overreaction, but then he explains what it was about. I just didn't want to talk about that while you're with Johnny boy. I no worries. I ain't going to touch his stuff, but I was going to sit down and watch TV or whatever, and I see, in his words, a bitch in front of me. Now we know what that means. That means a meth pipe or drug paraphernalia. If he's used already, as the defendant wants you to believe, why is he so angry about just seeing a pipe? It doesn't make sense. Like so much of what she's asked you to believe, it doesn't make sense. And I want to reiterate that as I go through this, I'm not trying to shift the burden in any way. This is our burden to prove this. It's our burden to prove this beyond any reasonable doubt. But the defendant presented you with this story. And my argument to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that it is more full of holes than a cheese grater. So, he sits down, he sees this pipe in front of him, and he makes a comment about it. The defendant says that he's using, I don't believe that's supported by the evidence at all. And remember, it was the defendant who was high, by her own words, and also by this text. She started the day under the influence. Also, remember what John Pfeffer told us. He said that he was coming over later in the evening, and it was the defendant who was going to supply him with meth. Now, John Pfeffer is somebody who we have seen has done a lot to protect the defendant. He even said it in his own words to Christy Cleland that he did what he could to protect her. So why would he not be telling the truth when he says, yeah, Sam was going to be the one to supply the meth? The defendant even changes that. He said, well, it was really me and Joey's. Nothing to suggest that. Again, as we said, the defendant, from her own words, under the influence. Now we're at 8:42 p.m., a little more than an hour before the homicide. Joey calls his cousin. We don't know what he talks about. The defendant said that he wasn't sure if he bought some meth, but there's nothing to suggest that he has, other than the defendant's testimony. And then we see this message. This is about an hour before Joey's death. Samantha, you know this is hard enough, babe. And you tell me to go in the other room. You tell me to go in the other room. While you sit out there with dude, my cravings are skyrocket right now. Now the defendant tells you that, oh, Joey was using. He's using, he's paranoid. It's all him. It's all him. Every decision she's made for that entire evening, the model of reasonability. Or reasonableness. Look at what Joey actually wrote. You know this is hard enough. This is a man who's been through addiction and what it's taken from him. It's taken his son. It's taken jobs. And he has climbed that ladder to get out of that hole over and over and over again. And here he is climbing it again. Working his way out of it. He has a job. He's doing what he can. And the defendant is using drugs in the next room, and he calls her out on it. He says, my cravings are skyrocketing right now. And what's her response? Chung left. Still, he's like, well, and she said, I'm just eating a bowl of ice cream. And he says, you're sitting out there high. Now you remember from the testimony, the defendant said she thought, well, I thought he was saying you're sitting out there high. Ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't make any sense, because she's like, what, should I not be? She's admitted she's been using this entire day, and he calls her out on it. You're sitting out there high. And remember, the defendant has every reason to make it look like Joey was going off the deep end that night, because it's not reasonable that someone would go like this to suicidal as quickly as the defendant says it. And here you can see him fighting his cravings. Doesn't look like Joey used when he got home. Doesn't look like they were fighting. It looks like the defendant has changed the story to try and fit the evidence. But it's not my job to present you one side of this. It's my job to present you the truth. And there's no doubt that Joey used that night. He's sitting in that room, fighting, doing what he can, and the woman he calls the love of his life, the woman who tearily sat on that stand and said she did everything she could to help him get Kaysen back, to help him get his life in order, that was his biggest advocate. When he's trying to fight it, she's out there high, and when he suggests it, I'll split if you split, there's this conversation, bowl for bowl. What does she say? She says, savage. Now, savage can mean all kinds of things. It can mean cool, it's kind of hardcore, all kinds of different things. What it doesn't mean is you shouldn't use. What this does not mean is, I don't think that's the best thing for your custody case. This doesn't mean maybe using's not the right idea. This is encouragement. The exact opposite of what she testified to you the other day. Now Joey talks to his cousin again. Seems like it's after he's used. Maybe he's canceling plans, maybe he's making plans, we don't know. What we do know is that less than 10 minutes before the homicide, Joey Carnot is making future plans. He reached out to his friend Ba. You can see the name, Ba Mode 77. He calls him Ba. He reached out to him looking for urine. He's looking to pass a drug test coming up. He's making future plans. 10 minutes before the homicide. The defendant wants you to believe that 10 minutes after this, he took his own life. Nothing suggests that. Nothing but her self-serving testimony. 10 minutes before the homicide, he's making future plans. Now, this is important for another reason. Because it also sets the timeline. And if you remember the defendant's testimony, she said that when this really came to a head, and this argument really kicked off, Joey came out of the room, he was going to go play pool with his friend, Ba. She also said that he might go with his uncle. He wasn't so clear on that. But the point that I'm making is that all of those things happened before that. None of them happened after this time. This is the first conversation that he's had with Ba all day. So there's no way he could be going to play pool with Ba if he hadn't reached out to Ba. Now there's no messages to suggest that he reached out to Ba to play pool or anything like that the defendant says. Nothing in the phone like that. And if you remember from the original exhibit, Joey never received Ba's response to this. He was dead by the time that happened. The defendant's story is that when he came out of that room, he was going to play pool with Ba. So, all right, let's just give her the benefit of the doubt. She deserves the benefit of all reasonable doubt. Let's just assume that that was the plan when he came out. The timeline is indisputable. He has 10 minutes between now and when John and Christy get there. And let's go through everything the defendant says happened in that 10 minutes. Joey came out of the room. They used meth after that. She told him not to leave. She then goes to the bathroom. Apparently long enough for her to close the door, because the next thing she said is Joey came in the bathroom and startled her. She noted they knocked over that shelf. She said when that happened, he accused her of using without him and hiding drugs. He said he needed to use the bathroom, so she left, got her hand caught in the door. Apparently Joey closes the door, uses the bathroom. All still in that 10 minutes now. Joey then brings up some guy named Angel, accuses his mom of sleeping with this person, goes into some discussion about his dad not being his real dad. The defendant then goes into the living room, tries to call John 4 times. There was a lot of testimony about that. She was very sure that that happened 10 minutes before. That's not what happened. But we'll just keep going. Joey then continued carrying on. She told him to have some pizza, just relax. She then separated from him again. She went to put on her sandals. Now she's over by the couch. We're still in that 10 minutes. She's over by the couch where she saw something fly across the room. Joey then said if she leaves, he's going to kill himself. Then she says there's some point where now she's determined to leave. She tells Joey he's welcome to come to Jeff's. All he has to do is calm down. And after that, he comes into view. He has blood between his fingers. We're still in the 10 minutes. She says, oh no. Reacts. Asks him to lie down on the ground. He does. Blood is gushing from his wound, in her words. She's covering it, trying to put pressure on it. She gets paper towels from under the sink, I think she says. Tries to put pressure on it. Hands are covered with blood. Then John and Christy comes. She, according to her, with her hands covered in blood, buzzes them in. We'll get into that in a second. Then John and Christy walk in. All in that 10 minutes, according to the defendant. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that that is not reason. It just isn't. And that's giving her, if that's a full 10 minutes. In reality, she would have had less than that. Because they didn't walk in and see just as she was stabbing Joey. By the time John and Christy walk in, Joey's on the floor. His pericardial sac is filling with blood. His heart is being strangled. And that's by the time they walk in. Now, she said, hands covered in blood. Yep, buzzed him in. Well, that's peculiar. Because there's no blood on the buzzer. Ladies and gentlemen, that does not make sense. That is one of a number of things of that statement that don't make sense. The Facebook call to John also doesn't make sense. She was sure when she was going through Attorney Temple's questions. Absolutely sure, yep. This is what happened 10 minutes prior. Nope, not even close. And when you listen to her version, she's high on meth all day. All day. I think she said she had subs in the beginning, but she's a combination of Suboxone and meth all day, under the influence. Yet every single thing she explained to you is just completely normal and appropriate. She's the voice of reason at every turn. But Joey, manic. Completely. Everything he did wrong, everything that happened, his fault. Every bad choice that was made, Joey. He's paranoid. He locks himself in the bedroom. All of these things. He stabbed himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, none of that is true. None of it. None of it fits the evidence. None of it makes any sense. Now, what we've seen so far, Joey went to work, came home, he resisted. Defendant's high all day. Joey's fighting his cravings, and they separate. Joey relapsed. But then after he does, he makes plans for the future. Now the stage is set, ladies and gentlemen. Joey's addiction has resulted in some costs. He's working his way out of it. He's trying to earn it back. He relapsed. That leads to confrontation. And we know how the defendant handles confrontation. we've heard it from 3 witnesses. You heard it from Daryl Courtbine, who actually heard her on the phone talking to Joey. I'll kill you. I'll stab you. And this isn't some sort of threat where you're just mad at somebody and you're like, oh God, I'll kill that guy. This is a specific, I will stab you. I think all of us can realize sometimes you say things we don't mean. Right? Sometimes you say, oh, I'll kill you, I'll do this, I'll do that, when you get angry. How often do you say something very specific like that? I'll stab you. It's different than a more generalized expression of frustration. This is a specific statement of intent. Randall Meyer, Joey told him the defendant threatened him 5 to 10 times. And the final witness we have is the defendant. She herself jokingly said, like, hey, who doesn't threaten to stab their boyfriend? I tried to play it. I took a clip of this, but regardless of whatever clip you listen to.
Right. Who doesn't threaten to stab their boyfriend at some point in their life?
Right. I agree.
She's talking to her friend. I agree. Who doesn't? I don't. Now, we know. We're going to play the crime lab video again. We've seen this a couple of different times. But now you know everything that happened beforehand. The stage is set before what happened. Now let's listen to this one more time.
God.
And I don't think it was an organ.
All right, we need to call the ambulance.
Hold on, it's just right here.
Okay.
Well,
Did you get everything put away?
I have to keep the stuff away. Keep them away so that.
Joey, come on.
Hey,
Snap to, buddy.
what are you supposed to say? You saw her at night? Hey.
I'm fucking old.
They talk about a lot in that short amount of time, 1 minute and 14 seconds. Never once does the defendant say it was a suicide. And wouldn't you expect that? In that situation, if it happened the way the defendant described, which I submit to you it did not, but let's just again assume that it did. Isn't that the first thing she says when they walk in? Like, oh my God, he did this to himself. Nothing about that. Nothing at all. What does she do? John Pfeffer has the appropriate reaction. Like, we need to call the ambulance. And she says, hold on, it's just right here. There's no way she says go ahead like she testified to, but we'll get there. But her first response, when John Pfeffer has the initial response I think we all would have, when you walk in and you see somebody in obvious distress, life-threatening distress. The obvious thing we'd all do, we need to call 911. We need to get help. And what does the defendant do? Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. Never in that does she say it was a suicide. Never. She goes through and acts like hiding the meth pipe and getting the drugs out is like the worst thing. Like that's the thing they're concerned about. That's the concern. Like, oh, there's drugs in the house. There's drugs. Like there's a man on the floor who's been stabbed in the area of his lungs and his heart. By her own word, he's gushing blood, but we're not concerned about him. Like let's worry about this meth pipe. Ladies and gentlemen, also not reasonable. But again, let's break this down. Just that first part.
Oh my fucking God.
He's breathing, and I don't think it was an organ.
All right, we need to call an
Go
ambulance.
ahead, it's just right here.
Okay, hold on.
Now looking at just that first part, what do we hear John Pfeffer say? You stabbed? There's a legal theory called an excited utterance. And what it is, basically looks at the reliability of something someone says. And think about it when we lie. When you lie, there's a filter that's in your brain, and what you know, you change it somehow. Sometimes it's to protect people's feelings. A lot of times it's just like either to benefit people or other people. But the point is there's a filter in your head where you change information so it's not true. But every now and then, when you see something so horrible, so startling, so amazing, your brain bypasses that filter. And it just comes right out. And that's what happened to John Pfeffer that day. Because you've heard a lot about what the defendant was doing when people walked into that room. And a lot of them are conflicted. Christy says she was saying she could go to prison. She's standing over him. I think the defendant says she was treating him, trying to take care of him. John said she was also there. So many different stories, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not asking you to believe any of them. The point that I'm making is that John Pfeffer, the recorded phone call when he walked in, his initial thought, before he could change anything, before he could modify that, before he could try to protect Sam, before he could do anything, was you stab. So however that scene was when he walked in, that's the first impression. Before he had any chance to modify it. Now, let's look specifically at her testimony about calling the ambulance. We've already heard it twice this morning. What her testimony was, numerous times, that, oh, she said, go ahead, and then hold on. It's just right here. Her testimony was that she encouraged John Pfeffer to call 911. She thought he was. Well, let's see.
I don't think it was an organ.
All right, we need to call an
Go
ambulance.
ahead, it's just right here.
Okay, hold
As John's talking, we need to call an ambulance. Hold on. It's just right here. She interrupts what he says to say, hold on. There's no room for her to say, go ahead. It did not happen. We know it did not happen. You heard it. It did not happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant's testimony is absolutely countered by the recording. Absolutely. Now, why would she change that? Again, the defendant doesn't have any burden. Burden is completely on us. But it doesn't look good if she's dissuading John from calling 911. By the time she told you that, she had listened to all of the evidence. She had to fit that in somewhere. But it doesn't fit there. We know that didn't happen. She sat on that stand and told you that. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that didn't happen. When you go back into that jury room, one of the big things you're going to take with you is your common sense. Your experiences, your everyday life experiences as adults living in the community. You know that didn't happen. And if someone's trying to avoid and not have law enforcement or first responders come up there, there's one heck of a reason. It's a lot bigger reason than just because there's some drugs there. That's because she stabbed Joey Carnot and she needs time to figure out exactly what to do. And this first story that comes out of it, like, oh, I'm not there. Doesn't really work out. But now time's ticking. There's an instruction you'll get to in the back with credibility of witnesses. There's a bunch of things you're going to consider. I didn't put them all on here. But you want to consider whether the witness has an interest or lack in the interest of the trial. The clearness of their recollections, the opportunity they had for observing, the reasonableness of that testimony, possible motives for falsifying. Why would they falsify testimony? Part of that statement says you're not to discredit the testimony of the defendant just because she's the defendant. And I'm urging you not to. Don't discredit the testimony of her testimony because she's the defendant. Discredit it because it does not match up with the evidence at all. And it certainly, ladies and gentlemen, does not. Now, this third clip, you may remember when the district attorney was asking her questions and asked her, like, you said, I've got to get the F out of here? The defendant says, yeah, I said that. I urge you to check your notes. I saw you all taking down notes throughout it. When she's getting asked questions by Attorney Templis, she says, oh yeah, that's what I said. But then her attorney asks her questions, and she's like, oh, no, I didn't say that. I said, get that stuff out of there. And admittedly, it's a little hard to hear.
Now, baby. Well, now
Did you get everything put away?
I have to keep the stuff from here. Keep them away from me.
Joey, come on.
Hey.
But it ends with a K. I've got to get out of here. And the defendant herself, when she's on the stand, that must not have been part of the story that she was prepping for, because she answered Attorney Templis' question and said, yeah, that's what I said. And Attorney Rock asks her, and then that changes. She's changed her story even in front of you. Because one big argument we've seen so far is that it wasn't her idea to leave. It was John's. John made her. Like, she didn't do any of that. This was all just John. John just twisted her arm. She's just going with John. Doesn't seem to say that in the audio. It's her idea to leave. And it makes sense when you think about who's come up with the other ideas. Because the last clip we're going to play in a minute, she's the one who suggests this alternate explanation. It's not John, but her. But back to Flight. She said, those are her words, and she flees rather than calls 911. Again, she has this story. She thinks John's going to call 911, but we know that she dissuaded John from calling 911. So she doesn't want to look bad and say she didn't call 911. But rather than do that, she flees. And again, if you look at the story, she said she leaves because she's trying to get drugs out of there. If that's really it, you go and you throw the drugs away. You throw them in the parking lot. You throw them somewhere. She drives away from that apartment and never comes back. That's not to get rid of drugs. That's to get rid of her. Because the real crime here is what she did when she stabbed Joey Carnot. You're going to get an instruction about that as well, that she fled the scene. And you can consider it, both to show that she's conscious of what she did and guilty of this crime. Now, the final clip, ladies and gentlemen.
Too late.
What are you supposed to say? You saw her at night? Hey.
I'm fucking old.
What are we supposed to say? Not, he did this to himself. Like, let's get help. What are we supposed to say? Not the truth. What are we going to make up to cover this up? That he fell on a knife? Whose idea is that? It's not John's. It's not Christie's. It's not Jeff Hayes's. It is the defendant's. It is her idea from the very beginning to cover this up. She wants to distance herself from that as much as possible. She wants to make it look like this was all John Pfeffer's idea. She got there, then it was all Jeff Hayes' idea. But no, you heard it from her lips. It was her idea from the very beginning. When she's asked about that later on the stand, her words were, she couldn't remember it. Couldn't remember saying it. But that didn't stop her from explaining it away. That didn't stop her from giving an explanation for it, where she said she didn't want him committed because he would lose Kaysen if he tried to kill himself. So she came up with this story. Not concerned about calling 911. What she tells you, ladies and gentlemen, is that she came up with that because she wants to help Joy protect his son. She wants to protect him. This woman who this entire day has been high in the apartment, when Joy was at work, who basically did everything she could to push him off the wagon. Now she's concerned. Now she's concerned to the point where she's making up stories. Oh, he fell on this knife. No, ladies and gentlemen, no. No. Just no. She said it because she stabbed Joey Carnot. But they needed to explain that away. And that's the first explanation they come up with. And we hear that 2 other times. But we'll get there. She hasn't even called 911 yet. She says she thinks John is calling 911. You hear everything that happens from when John and Christy walk in until that statement. She tells you she thinks John is calling 911. When? What would give her that idea? Nothing. There's nothing. Before they call 911, before they even think about it, outside of John and the defendant telling him not to, the defendant is coming up with other explanations. She's trying to come up with lies to cover this up. Why? Because she stabbed Joey Carnot. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are so many reasons. Again, she plans to cover up from the very beginning. We know it's her. There are so many reasons this is not a suicide. There's so many. The defendant's changing stories. She tells John not to call. Her statements. What are we supposed to say? He fell on a knife. Her saying she has to leave. We're going to get to what she did after that, but she drove herself from the scene in her own car. And she's threatened to stab him before. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no way this is a suicide. Now, remember, she says she tried to persuade John to call 911. And there's been a lot of testimony about that initial clip and when 911 was called. So this is that full video from the vet clinic that shows both that initial recording of John Pfeffer and then when the 911 call was actually placed. Listen to how far apart they are.
She called me 4 times while we were over here. I usually fucking just use my knife to go in, but hello. You stick. Oh my fucking God.
And I don't think it was an organ.
All right, we need to call an ambulance.
Hold on, it's just right here.
Okay, hold on.
Maybe. Well, it's not in
Did you get everything put away?
I had to get the stuff from here. Keep them awake so then.
Joey, come on.
Hey,
Snap to, buddy.
what are you supposed to say? You fell on a knife? Hey.
I'm fucking old.
Now you'll notice in this version of the recording that that counter at the bottom left keeps ticking. That's because this one doesn't stop. Right now, Joey Carnot is laying on the floor of apartment 5, and his pericardial sac is filling with blood. Over a can of blood. As you listen, his heart is being strangled by itself. Part of what we need to prove to you is that the defendant intended to kill Joey Carnot. As Joey's lying on the ground, his life being taken away from him, seconds slip by as they could have called 911. And what do we hear? All this time, he's laying there. It goes for a while, minutes. You say minutes, and you think, a minute's not that long. But right now, Joey Carnot is laying on the ground. Every second counts. And in here, you can feel them tick by. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is just about drugs, all this time, they could have thrown these drugs into anywhere. But it's not. All this is time that they could have called 911. That first responders could have responded and actually been trying to save Joey's life. But he's lying on the linoleum as this time ticks by. That pericardial sac filling with blood, slowly, as his heart, as it gets harder and harder to pump. Now you'll see when that counter gets to 21:52:34, that's when the defendant leaves. No 911 call. Joey's dying on the linoleum. And she leaves, coming up here at 21:52:34. Fleeing the scene of the man she has stabbed in the heart. There she is right there. There's the defendant fleeing the scene. All that time. 21:53:32. Now she turns on to Northland. Joey's heart is being strangled still. She has her phone, 21:53:45. This is where she calls Jeff Hayes. Her testimony is she called him because she didn't just want to pop in. Didn't want to surprise him. No one's called 911. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an intentional homicide. Now 911.
Hey, oh yeah, 911, what's the location of the emergency?
This location, I don't know the address,
Okay.
we have a stabbing victim, stabbing shot. He's bleeding, he's unconscious.
Stay with me. Hey, look at me.
I don't see anything else.
Okay.
Good, but he
Is this gonna be 2800, do you know? Is that the building number?
Yes, and apartment 5, get really out.
Okay, you said apartment number 5?
Yes.
Okay, good luck. Thanks. Okay, and was it self-inflicted or did someone do this to him?
There's nobody here, so I don't know, but I think he fell on a knife. He slipped himself.
Hey.
And it looks like, I don't know.
Hey, stay with me. Oh, I want to confirm, you said apartment number 5?
Right, apartment number 5, yes.
Stay with me, buddy. Hey. Okay, you said no one else was there with them?
Nobody else is
Originally?
here.
Hey, yeah. Hey.
Nobody else is
Hey,
here.
okay.
Well, I mean, my girl.
Okay, is it? Okay, and when you came in, it was usually by himself?
Right.
Okay, is he currently, is he still breathing?
Yes, he's breathing.
Okay, breathing, but I'm not.
Shallow and labor breathing.
Joy was still breathing at that time. All that time. Where she left him to die after she stabbed her. But it doesn't end there. That she would have you believe that it's JP's idea. Even though what John said on the 911 call was what the defendant suggested. He said on the 911 call, I think he fell and slipped on a knife. Whose idea was that? That was the defendant's idea. You heard it on the recording. That's what John utters. That's what he repeats. And then Officer Felmer talks to her. It's now 10:19. And this is what she says happens.
Actually, anyway, the cop wants to talk to you. Okay, hold on.
What's up?
This is the girlfriend.
Not supposed to be, I suppose. How do you turn it on the speaker?
I think it is wait. There.
This is his girlfriend.
Yeah.
This is his girlfriend? Where's this Samantha? Where are you right now, Samantha?
I'm over at my friend's.
Your friends?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any way you could come back to the apartment that we could talk with you?
What's going on?
Well, like, we could explain that maybe if you come over here and talk with us. Some stuff happened at the apartment. What's your boyfriend's name again?
Joey.
Joey, yeah. So it sounds like some stuff happened with Joey. We were called out here to investigate.
Is he okay?
At the
I
moment,
know that he has manic episodes. And he was talking crazy earlier, but
what was he saying earlier?
he was saying that he was so upset about his son and he was saying that he wanted to court get his son back. And that he was upset that I left, but he was acting so crazy that I figured I had to get out of their way earlier.
And how earlier would you say that would be?
A couple hours.
Like about what time would you say that you left?
I'd say probably around like 7.
Run 7.
My parents left right when I got here.
Okay. And what was Joey doing? I guess that you mentioned he was acting crazy. What was he doing?
When he acts manic, he, like, assumes I'm cheating on him, and everything I say is a lie, and everything in his reality becomes kind of like a delusion.
Okay.
He's on medication for it, but then they didn't send him to him in the mail right away, so he didn't have him in his system for over 24 hours.
Okay. Would you be okay coming back to the apartment?
Well, is he okay? Is he in the hospital? Should I go to the hospital?
No, don't go to the hospital. I'm not sure what his medical state is right now. I'm not with him, but
What do you mean his medical state?
yeah, so he was found. I'm not sure if are these friends of his, or who are these? Who are the two that are here?
Those are our mutual friends.
Mutual friends. Okay, so it sounds like the friends that possibly found him in the apartment. And he just kind of collapsed to the ground. So, but I'm not exactly sure what all the details are
What do you mean
surrounding it.
collapsed?
Again, I'm not sure exactly all the details surrounding it. I didn't speak with the friends. I just assisted with, I guess, making sure that the scene was all
Did he
secure and
take
stuff like
something?
that. I'm not sure at the moment. We're trying to figure out what happened.
Oh my gosh.
So, would you be able to come to the apartment, or come back to the apartment, and then we can talk with you further here?
I mean, I can,
Okay.
but I'm not supposed to have police contact without letting my PO know first.
Okay. Well, I think they would probably understand this one. I don't think they would have an issue if you were in police contact for this.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let my friends bring me back right away.
Alright, thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Now when you call me emergency shock.
Note that she adds significant parts to that story. Joey's manic. She left hours before. The manic thing we've heard again here. That story didn't change. Feigned surprise and concern. She testifies that it was all John's idea. It was her idea from the beginning. Now, other noteworthy parts of this. When she testified yesterday, she said, it's been, 72 hours that he hasn't had his medication. Here the night of, she says 24. When she testifies before you, ladies and gentlemen, she's making it look worse. Then collapsed. She testified she thought it was a collapsed lung. Officer Felmer told her collapsed to the ground. She said she had a bunch of people behind her. I don't hear anybody behind her. Asks if he took something. Completely untrue. She knows exactly what happened. She has no idea what happened. But she's saying, I'm not sure, did he take something? And she tries to make this story to say she said it because in case they gave him opiates, he didn't want the opiate blocker. It's very complicated. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the problem with not telling the truth. That you have to remember all these little details. That's the funny thing about the truth, is it doesn't change. Unlike the defendant's stories. Now, oops. There we go. She arrived at the Veterans Village, and the cover-up continues. This is what she's wearing. Outside of the sandals, none of these clothes are recovered. As she says numerous times, last I knew they were just in the hamper. People don't throw away your clothes without you knowing. We also know she has a bag. So in that time that we listened to, when Joey Carnot is laying on the floor, his heart is being strangled, the defendant took time to pack a bag, to bring it with her to Jeff Hayes' house. And why would anybody want to get rid of their clothes if this was a suicide? Ladies and gentlemen, that among all of these things not reasonable. Little Caesars, that night. Jeff takes active steps to conceal her vehicle. The defendant says, well, I had no idea. Jeff just did that on his own. Yet there she is, standing next to Jeff as he's got the Little Caesars box. You can't hear the audio, but you saw it. He's motioning towards it, talking about pushing it down. What else could he be talking about? The defendant knew exactly what he was talking about. And then, of course, the message to Joey the next day. Because remember, at this point, the story is she wasn't there. That's still where we are in this. She hasn't talked to John and Christy yet. She hasn't realized that that story's not going to fly. So she sends this to Joey. What happened? Even the defendant says, yeah, that was I think it was her exact words were, that was a deception. Agreed? So, there's just so many now. We know John and Christy arrived. And now she knows what John has told the police because John gets her phone. But after that, Jeff continues to change things, takes the stickers off her vehicle. And the defendant says, well, I had no idea. But yet, when you listen to her,
I said they said it was my car, but they can't prove it's my car. Because when they found the car, there was blue stickers, and they said that the car that left had stickers on it.
No, Jeff said that, you had stickers on your car.
No, they weren't on there when they found it.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, yeah.
so many different stories gets confusing after a while. But she definitely knew Jeff took the stickers off her vehicle. That's one of these multiple changing stories. It isn't like she drove it around and then got out one day to put gas in and realized that her stickers were gone. She knew it the whole time. Now, all of this goes to show that the defendant intentionally killed Joey Carnot. She's high all day. She's using in front of him. She called John 4 times, not 911. We talked about how the timing on that was off. She persuaded him not to call 911. Worked to create a story at the scene. Then left the scene. Lied about what happened to a police officer after leaving. And then sends a message to further bolster this account. And takes steps to conceal her vehicle. All of this shows that she intentionally killed Joey Carnot. And you'll see from that jury instruction, intent can be formed just a moment before. And I think that's what happened here. She formed the intent to kill him. She did. And then did everything she could to cover this up. But even that, there's more. Again, these changing stories, it's tough to remember.
You know, he was blinking a lot on there, so maybe that was it. But anyway, I wanted to tell you, JP, in the beginning said he got there and he wasn't there, and then they questioned him the next day or whatever, or got him,
Questioned
and then
him
he
once
said,
he was with the girl
Yeah.
together, and then they said I was there.
yeah,
They
but
were
for a
questioned
long
apart,
time.
and they gave their statements, and then they were together, and then
Yeah.
they lied and said I was there.
No, you were there.
I wasn't there.
When they got there, you weren't there?
No. I was never there.
Oh,
I was never there.
oh, okay, all right, I got something screwed up here from when I talked to you in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it, okay, got it.
It's not only the defendant's mom who got things screwed up. The defendant got things screwed up. Because then she says,
There's a recording. John's phone recorded, JP's phone recorded when he walked into the apartment. You can hear what
Yeah.
I say, you can hear what Christy says, and you can hear what JP says. When they walk in, and Joey's on the floor.
Yeah,
You can hear it all recorded on his phone.
you could hear what I say. So she was there now. How many times do these stories change? Ladies and gentlemen, the truth never changes, unlike the defendant's statements. But again, there's still more. She has these numbers written on her arm. Part of what she testified to was that, well, the reason she ran is she didn't want to go to jail for the drugs. But then when they apprehend her, after she leaves Jeff Hayes' house, she has these numbers on her arm. And the reason she writes them on her arm is because she says, well, I expected to go to jail, I was just going to report. So when Joey's on the ground, his life literally hanging in the balance. Everything to avoid police contact. But afterwards, she just assumes it's going to happen. I argue that it goes to show, like that night, she's trying to get away from this. She's trying to distance herself from it because she stabbed Joey Carnot. A few days after the incident, she's going to Wisconsin Rapids. She feels she's sufficiently distanced and she's preparing to go, and she has numbers on her arm, ready to go. And one of those numbers is from Greg Allen. Greg Allen, whose texts we have seen. I need a phone too. Can you get me one? An iPhone 15 Pro Max, please, too. I'm gonna owe you big time, but I'll pay you back in other ways. 3 days after she killed Joey. Now, she testified that other ways was, I'm just gonna do some work for him. But you heard the call. You heard the call with her and Greg Allen. But they're talking about having a physical, sexual relationship 16 days after she killed Joey. No remorse. No regret. Doing whatever she needs to. Now, numerous things that she said were contradicted by the evidence. That she called John 10 minutes before. We played that call. We know that's not true. She said she was putting pressure on the wound. Her hands were covered in blood. No blood on the buzzer. Said she told John to go ahead and call the ambulance. That didn't happen. I have to get the fuck out of here when she says this. She admits it to the district attorney. When her attorney asks her, she says, no, I didn't say that. Just changes on who's asking her the questions. She said that laundry list of things happened in 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit that's not reasonable. You noted that when she testified, she said she'd been convicted of crimes 14 times. That's something you can also consider when you're determining her character for truthfulness. And back to the truth. Again, the funny thing about it is it doesn't change. Because we also heard from Pam Pfeffer, John's mom. The day after this, John goes to her house. And she says that John is like she's never seen him before. He's crying, he's emotional, he is just distraught. He has seen the life go out of Joey's eyes. And there are some times where you can take the most hardened people, but they talk to somebody special like their mother, and they just tell them the truth. This is another excited utterance. But Pam knows things that only someone from the scene would know, unless she listened to the 911 call, and there's no reason she would have. Specifically, that the story was to say, what are we supposed to say? He fell on a knife? How else does Pam know that if John doesn't tell her? John told her the truth. John didn't tell that to law enforcement, but he told that to his mom. He gave another story to law enforcement. That Samantha looked him dead in the eye and said, just tell him he stabbed himself. He said that happened right when he got in there. We didn't hear that. But he tells his mom, that was the story. What are we supposed to say? He fell on a knife. Only hear that in the 911 call and that recording. And Pam says something else. Pam says John told her that the defendant admitted she stabbed Joy. We know John is telling his mom. What he's telling his mom is corroborated by what we hear at the scene. And John says Samantha told him. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason not to believe it. Look at everything the defendant's done. She's testified contrary to the evidence, to times that don't match the facts. She persuaded John not to call 911. She noted it was her idea to leave. She suggested a cover-up before even leaving the scene. She fled before waiting those crucial minutes where Joey Carnot was dying on the floor. She fled and didn't call 911 on the way. She got rid of the clothes she was wearing when she got there. There's more. She called Officer Felmer. Numerous inconsistencies, both with what she told him and what she testified to you the past few days. Supported Jeff's actions of altering her vehicle. She sent that message to Joey to support that first cover-up story. Then she called him numerous times. She said she was calling to check on him. She didn't call him to check on him. She left him. Blood was gushing out of a wound by his lungs and his heart. It's all part of her alibi to deceive. She then worked to avoid being apprehended. You remember her hiding in the cameras? Even when Jeff, that last time they got out, Jeff came out and he motioned her to come out. She didn't willingly go out. They're doing everything they can to avoid apprehension, even then. Supports Jeff removing stickers on the vehicle, all in response to a suicide? Ladies and gentlemen, that does not make sense. That is not reasonable. Especially for someone who wasn't suicidal. You're going to get a packet of jury instructions, the ones the judge read to you yesterday afternoon. And one of them is jury instruction 140. It defines reasonable doubt. A doubt based on reason and common sense. Read the entire thing. I urge you to look through all of it. What it all boils down to is you're not supposed to search for doubt, ladies and gentlemen. You're supposed to search for the truth. That truth that never changes. That truth that shows beyond any doubt that the defendant caused the death of Joey Carnot and she acted with the intent to kill Joey Carnot. Thank you.